NVIDIA is on track to open at all-time highs. The company says it now hopes to resume selling those H20 AI chips in China soon. Comes just days after Jensen Huang met with the president and 3 months after the U.S. did institute those export restrictions. Here's what Jensen had to say. This is overnight in China.
That the U.S. government has approved for us filing licenses to start shipping H20s. Okay. And so we will start to sell H20s to the Chinese market. And I'm looking forward to shipping H20s very soon. And so I'm very happy with that very, very good news. The second news is that we're also announcing a new GPU called RTX Pro. And RTX Pro is very important because it's designed for computer graphics in digital twins and AI.
So NVIDIA is up 5. Yeah. AMD is going to be working on some licensing too.
Figured they've got something too. Lisa Su's got something. But I want to just go over what happened this weekend. The president met with Jensen. Jensen I call him Da Vinci. He's a charming Da Vinci. He's really hard to resist. If you go and listen to Mad Money, when Jensen was on last, everyone was thinking he's going to get shot down. And he said, no, he has tremendous faith that this process would work. He talked to the president about the idea that the dollar is the reserve currency, and you want NVIDIA's chips to be the reserve currency. You want everyone to know that everything is built around NVIDIA, that's going to help because 50% of the engineers in the world in China, you don't want them to be the reserve currency, you want us. Apparently that's very persuasive for the president, and it should be. Because what it says is, we're unbelievable. Let's take credit. It's only going to help us. Let us in and do this. The second chip is for construction. It's what you called digital twin, where you build a model and then you build a big thing. But this is a huge win. Other than Jensen, I don't know a soul who felt that the president would change his mind on this. Not a soul. But Jensen was convinced that if he just explained why this is about American dominance, the president would believe it.
And the danger of necessity being the mother of invention if China had to find other ways.
They would, yes. And he said, look, we're going to be the, I love that reserve currency line. When they were putting that out, I was like, wow, I don't know. That's a good one. Because before it was kind of like, look, we don't want them to develop their own, we do it ourselves. But when he came out with this idea that America must be triumphant, I think it really resonated with the president. And, he's on Fareed's show. He wasn't on Brett Baier. And the president obviously respects Jensen. Now, maybe the president respects Jensen, $4 trillion, Jensen, wealthy guy. I'm sure there's going to be people who are cynical and say that that's why they liked him. I think that Jensen made a case that we are the supreme leaders of the world. Let's not take it down and give the Chinese the edge. And the president really liked that because some of the president's advisors were like, he's too close to China.
No, I mean, it's the U-turn there, the U-turn on Ukraine, which we'll talk about later. Webbush does, though, call this a watershed moment. OPI goes to 200. I don't think you have a problem with that.
No, I thought that Ben Reitz's next stop, $5 trillion, was actually a very cogent piece. These are big surprises. Look, these are huge surprises to anybody who's been following NVIDIA closely because it looked like a lost cause. And Jensen, if he could get with the president and explain it, the president would understand. He got with the president. The president understood. He reversed this. They didn't get the chips that they wanted. They got powerful chips, but not the ones they wanted.
You think he has more juice than any other CEO with the White House?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I wanted to ask you about the big news today, which is that NVIDIA's stock is reacting to it. The company is now going to be able to restart selling the H20 chips to China. Why does that help us win this race?
Well, so first of all, I agree that we shouldn't be selling our best and latest, greatest advanced semiconductors to China. But the H20 is a deprecated chip. It's not anywhere close to the state of the art. And that's why the Biden administration allowed the H20 chip to be sold to China. So this is a continuation of that policy. And since then, over the past year, we've seen Huawei make huge strides. They introduced a new technology called Cloud Matrix, and they've started exporting their technology to other countries. And so I think it's pretty important that we actually compete and take market share away from Huawei in China. Otherwise, we're basically creating a huge subsidy for Huawei in China. We're giving them all of that market. We're giving them all that revenue to fund their R&D, and we're basically creating a developer ecosystem for them. So I think we don't want to sell China our latest, greatest technology, but I do think we at least want to make it a little bit difficult for Huawei here. We do want to sell them a deprecated chip so they don't run away with that huge part of the market.
It makes sense. What do you know about their capabilities and whether our export controls on chips in particular have worked? Do they have anything that can match what we do? Are they close?
Well, Huawei has a technology called Cloud Matrix 384, and if you look at the Huawei chip, it's called the Ascend chip. It's not as powerful as our chips, like the latest NVIDIA chip. The latest NVIDIA chip is about 3 times more powerful than the Huawei chip. However, Huawei has used its ability in networking to network more chips together. So with Cloud Matrix, they network 384 chips together to produce a result that is comparable in its output to an NVIDIA rack system. So what China's basically doing is they're brute forcing it. They're using more chips and they're using more power to achieve a similar kind of result. It's not as efficient as NVIDIA, and like I said, it consumes a lot more power. So the American chips are better, our technology is better, but China does have an answer to it. And this is why we need to encourage and allow American companies to export our technology across the world, because a lot of the restrictions we've put on our companies are only going to create pent-up demand for the Huawei product. And so, again, we don't want our best chips going to China, but when it comes to the rest of the world, we should be promoting American exports and making it the global standard.
Was Jensen at the White House, was he persuasive on this front to the president?
I think Jensen's been talking about a lot about this publicly. He's been talking about it privately as well. So yes, Jensen is obviously a great advocate for this. But also, look, I think we've just had an American-Chinese trade negotiation. And so I think this is all happening in the context of those deals. There are certain things from China that we want. We want rare earths. We want rare earth magnets. And I think that they need certain things from us or want certain things from us. So I think this is all happening in the context of a larger trade negotiation.
Following that NVIDIA news, and with that, Josh, I want to come over to you. The NVIDIA news that NVIDIA says it's getting assurances from the White House it can once again sell its H20 chips in China. A lot of people see that as a broader tailwind for the quote-unquote AI trade. How are you viewing it?
Oh, look, NVIDIA obviously has had this overhang when it comes to the Chinese situation. It's not new. People that have been invested in the stock have understood that it's not entirely clear that they'll be able to operate in China the way they had been. And obviously, when news like this comes along, there's an exhalation. People feel better. You could see today the stock looks unbelievable. Yet again, up 4%, new all-time record high. Over the last couple of weeks, this thing has just gone parabolic once again. It's really, really tough to say, even now, at this advanced date, given everything that's happened in AI, everything that's happened with some of the other players, it's really hard to say that NVIDIA is not still in every bit as competitive a position as they've ever been. They just, they're exactly in the space that you'd want to be if you're an NVIDIA shareholder. That said, this is a really tough stock to buy today. So I feel bad for people that are not in it or that got out of it at much lower prices and now are looking at 171 staring them right in the face. But that's the reality. It's a really tough stock to pull the trigger on to the long side, given how much it's run up just in the last couple of weeks.
But Josh, doesn't this unlock, a new set of revenues? Maybe not for this quarter. This quarter's winding down, but for the next fiscal year and beyond, doesn't it unlock the idea that we're going to see Chinese technology built on NVIDIA's infrastructure?
Yeah, I think the cynic in me would say, don't worry about China getting access to GPUs because they can get them from other countries in Asia. And there's probably some truth to that. And I don't know whether or not analysts have that in their numbers already. But absolutely, there's a case to be made that you could see a round of estimate lifts happening between now and when they report. Remember, Frank, NVIDIA is a late reporter. They're the last of the large cap tech to report traditionally. And there's a lot of time between now and then, even though we're in earnings season now. The thing that's most important to NVIDIA, though, more so than this new development with selling in China, is what the hyperscalers say in their reports, and those reports are going to come early. If you look at the way NVIDIA stock traded around the reports of Microsoft and Amazon and Alphabet last quarter, you realize that's the real catalyst here. These Meta, these companies coming out and saying not only are they committed to the spends that they've already announced, but in some cases we've heard about increased spending. NVIDIA doesn't get all of it, but they get a lot of it. So that's to me, that's really the deciding factor on how this name will trade for the rest of the summer. What do their biggest customers have to say about the demand environment?
All right, with that, also, Melius Research actually upgrading NVIDIA from 205 up to 235. Jim and Jason, I want to come over to you guys. Jim, you first. What's your take on this NVIDIA news when it comes to this company? And is it a read into any other tech plays? I'm just looking at the moves right now. I'm seeing ASML up about 1.5%, Taiwan Semi up over 3%, Supermicro up over 7%.
AMD, I mean, the whole semi space is up on this news. And I think just very simply, this is the sort of news that you allow to ride. Obviously, we see NVIDIA up 4%. I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to go higher. And some of the NVIDIA adjacent names, CoreWeave's up very big today, as you can see. And I think what you do here is this is a time in the markets, particularly for the AI semi-trade, where you just don't worry about valuation. And that's not a sidehand way of saying, oh, I think NVIDIA is overexpensive. It's just a time that this news needs to be digested by the market. It probably crescendos for a few more days. After that, this does seem like a market to me that has run very far, very fast. And I wouldn't be surprised if, now looking at the market overall, if you at least got a pause, at least got maybe a little bit of a pullback just from buyers being exhausted.
Let's start with NVIDIA hitting an all-time high again today after the company received approval to resume sales of its H20 AI chip to China. It's a major win for the company, which has suffered from tariffs and export restrictions. And our next guest owns the stock. Let's bring in Nancy Tengler. She's the CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Laffer Tengler Investments. Nancy, great to see you. Kind of catch us up here on NVIDIA's, your thinking, this valuation now, opportunities in China, and all the rest of it.
Good to see you, Kelly. You look great, healthy.
Thank you. Sleep deprived.
So
but yeah,
I guess I'm going to say, what?
Sleep deprived, but go ahead.
Well, you had the same 5.5 kids. So I guess I would just say that the valuation is not as stretched as everyone would argue. I don't know that you buy it here. We were adding during the April tariff tantrum. We picked some off at $108 a share. We added to the position while we've been trimming Broadcom, which has actually outperformed NVIDIA over the last year. But if you look at fiscal year earnings growth, 2026 is supposed to be 45%, then 33% in 27, 14% in 28, and it's currently trading at a forward PE of 40. So you're actually paying less than 1 times on a price earnings to growth basis. So unless you think the growth in this company is done, I don't think you sell the stock here. I don't think you necessarily buy more, but on dips you step in and add to the holdings. I would also just point out AMD is actually up more because their M1 chip is going to get reinstated as well, and that's going to benefit the whole space. So the AI trade is what as an investor I'm focused on. I've been talking about productivity for the last 3 years, the analogies to the 90s, and the need to pivot to old economy companies that are invested in the new technologies, and then the providers of, or embracing the new technologies, and then the providers of the picks and shovels. So I think we still love it, and we continue to hold it. It's one of our largest holdings in our growth strategy.
That will be reassuring news, although maybe bittersweet for those who didn't jump in as the stock kept kind of making those comeback moves.
But just on NVIDIA in particular, I think today's move highlights just how well Jensen Huang has navigated the political situation and the geopolitical situation where he is able to now sell chips to China that were banned, where we still don't want them to have our most advanced chips. What does that say about the stock?
I think what it says about the entire vertical stack, if you have a vertical stack versus a horizontal stack, you're going to protect a lot of it. And what it says about, in terms of national security, what it says about protecting your innovation, that screams loudly. But at the same time, it still opens up a market for other parts of that stack to be sold into. And that's why you're seeing a lot of fervor come back again into the space. And again, it's easy to get overly excited about all of this, but the total addressable market is just beginning. We haven't untapped the last phase. We're just going into the second phase.
Now to NVIDIA. Speaking of big cap tech, shares hitting a record high after the company said it will soon be allowed to resume sales of its H20 AI chip in China. In April, the U.S. government told the company it would require a license to sell the chips in China, effectively halting sales. The news boosting shares of other chip makers like AMD, chip manufacturer TSMC, while propelling the sector ETF SMH to a record. Joining me now is Vivek Arya, senior semiconductor analyst at BofA Securities. Vivek, is this kind of another on again, off again, or do you think we have at last sort of a floor in what the Trump administration is going to allow, is going to look for, and it's off to the races?
Sure. I think, John, it's hard to make a long-term forecast with any kind of geopolitical event. But for now, I think it's a good sign that there is easing of tensions between U.S. and China. We saw this with the easing of restrictions around chip design EDA software with the approval of the ANSYS deal for Synopsys. So it's very good to see this restriction also being removed potentially for NVIDIA products, for AMD products. I think it helps the U.S. AI ecosystem stay involved with the Chinese AI software developers who are innovating very rapidly, like a DeepSeek. And then also, I do think that it helps the U.S. kind of maintain its dominance over the AI technology stack over the next number of years. Because, I think only the U.S. companies really have this nice symbiotic relationship between hardware and software. So by keeping involved with wherever software is being deployed, I do think it helps the U.S. continue to dominate the AI stack. So for now, I think it's very good news. But these things do have a habit of changing on a frequent basis.
We see Supermicro, we see AMD jumping on this, not Dell. Interestingly to me, what does this signal about the extent to which computer chips are bargaining chips as far as the U.S.'s relationship with China, and who is likely to benefit if they're allowed to continue selling to China?
Sure. I think that, first of all, there is the China benefits are probably more for merchant silicon. That would be NVIDIA, that would be AMD. But we might also see benefits flow across to the networking side. That is Broadcom, that is Marvell, to some of their chip design software suppliers, to some of the foundries, to memory. So there is kind of that broadening, of benefits. But to kind of put things in perspective, China is about 10 or 15% of AI spending today. We think if these restrictions continue to be at these levels, over time, China's contribution to the AI capex is probably going to be only about 5 to 10%. But what is rapidly kind of taking that place is the spending that is being done in all these sovereign locations. Look at the spending that the Middle East is doing. I think that could far exceed the kind of spending that China might be doing in AI. US, of course, continues to spend. Recently, we heard Meta plan these multi-gigawatt data centers, Prometheus and Hyperion. Right, every gigawatt, remember, is a $50 billion of AI opportunity for the likes of NVIDIA. So we think that this benefits are spreading globally beyond China.
It also seems that a potential related benefit here is if you're a company that sells a lot into the region, into Singapore, and there might be controversy over where those goods that you're selling end up, is China getting a hold of them? This might take some of that off the table and perhaps some risk for you now.
I think it does help to some extent, although these companies have been clear that what they're shipping to Singapore and certain other Asian locations outside of China is really because some of their customers want the billing to be done in those locations. They're not actually, shipping a lot of chips to those locations,
of course,
per se.
Yeah.
Right. But I do think, but I agree with your bigger perspective that the more these chips are available globally, I do think it helps to really invigorate the AI ecosystem globally. Right. And I think that continues to, that helps the U.S. to maintain its dominance in this AI stack for a number of years.
All right.
Someone said we can't quantify what this means for NVIDIA. You tried to do that, didn't you? You actually, if they are able, how much of that write-off comes back? It reminds me of a bank when they bring back reserves in, and all of a sudden they didn't need to have those reserves.
Right on. So the impact, I think Tim Memmi mentioned a little bit earlier, it was 15% of their business was this lower level chip. Non-direct sales to China is probably another 10%. So think of a quarter of NVIDIA's business is China related. We're talking about that 15%. And so then begs the question, they get back 15% of the business. Why is the stock only up 4% today? In part because this was telegraphed. Jensen was pretty clear that they're going to find some way forward here. But another piece to it, too, is that just given how unpredictable a lot of these developments have been, you hear one thing one day, a few weeks later, you get a totally different outcome. You mentioned the Russia impact on this. Investors are also asking themselves, like, is this really going to be back for good? And so that kind of explains that gap between that 15% add back and the 4%. But in general, Joe, this is it's obviously it's good for NVIDIA, but I would put everything I just went through as part of the smaller picture of the news today. There's a much bigger picture that I think is going on in terms of what this means for the broader AI space.
So give me a law of large numbers and what's possible 2, 3, 4 years from now with NVIDIA. What kind of things are we talking? We're talking about $5 trillion, I guess, anyway.
So with NVIDIA specifically is that next year, the street numbers, the analysts that updated their numbers today, not all 40 have updated their numbers, but those that did are looking for 30% revenue growth in calendar 26. Previously, it was 25% growth. They're going to grow by about 60% in calendar 25. And so when I think about how big this can be, I think that ultimately we're going to be 35% better. And ultimately, that probably is going to get us to $5 trillion and greater. And I would just, I mentioned that the bigger picture going on is that there was a huge read, a huge tell in terms of what this means for the broader AI trade. I've been talking over the past few months with a former trade official that worked with Trump on the in his first administration around trade. And over the past few months, he's really stressed the importance of NVIDIA in the conversations, especially trying to get some of these rare metals. But the fact that China is willing to use NVIDIA, their junior varsity chips, as a key negotiating piece, the fact that they're willing to accept that, I think really underscores two things. Number one is that U.S. has a substantial lead when it comes to the hardware side. And second is that they recognize the power of AI is going to be so important that they need to take anything that they can around these lower level chips. And so I think that when we ask the question, Joe, about like where does NVIDIA go, I think that we're probably 20% of the way through this build-out. This is going to go on much longer than people think.
Gene, so you talk about the broader AI trade. So put your analyst hat on, and is this the day actually to buy AMD or Taiwan Semi, who the RTX Pro is being built off of essentially their N4 platform? So our investors, should we be focused only on NVIDIA? I don't think investors are, but let's take this away into stocks that are really exposed to this trade.
So on the AMD side is that there is a market share question there. Do they ultimately have the chops? And so I think that TSM is probably a better place to be there. I think if you go down the list and look at other supporting casts around AI infrastructure, where companies like Vertiv that are doing some of the cooling, things like that, I think are part of it. So I can't speak to AMD specifically, but I just again kind of want to anchor is that. We constantly talk about AI, but I still think it's hard for us to grasp how early we are.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. NVIDIA stock finished the day 4% higher after the company announced in a blog post overnight that they have received assurance from the U.S. government that licenses for the H20 will be approved and that NVIDIA can once again sell the H20 into China. Jensen Huang also announced a new RTX Pro GPU for the Chinese market. This is massively positive for NVIDIA, as they would have guided Q2 revenue nearly 18% higher at $53 billion for the quarter if there had been no export control in the H20. And now that the export control is going away, NVIDIA is looking at tens of billions of dollars in additional revenue that analysts had zeroed out of their estimates after Jensen Huang told us that NVIDIA was assuming zero revenue from China moving forward. And so this is a very big deal. Now market participants will shift their focus ahead to hyperscaler earnings, which are scheduled to begin soon, with Alphabet set to report earnings next week on July 23rd after market close. If the hyperscalers reinforce or even increase their CapEx guidance, then we are likely to see NVIDIA move higher on that news. I don't know what to expect from each individual hyperscaler, but I do expect Meta to have strong CapEx guidance given the news we got yesterday that Meta will invest hundreds hundreds of billions of dollars in compute build-out in the coming years with multiple multi-gigawatt data centers. Keep in mind that a single 1 gigawatt data center leads to tens of billions of dollars in revenue for NVIDIA. And Meta wants to build multiple multi-gigawatt clusters. And so I expect Meta's CapEx guide to be strong. I'm also expecting Alphabet's CapEx guidance to be strong. I don't know if you're aware, but Google has many AI tools and apps, including VO3, which is a text-to-video generator. I've used it extensively over the past month or so, and I'm not alone in that. Tens of millions of clips have been generated with VO3 since its launch, and so I expect Alphabet at the very least to maintain their CapEx guide, and I would not be surprised if they increase it. As for Amazon and Microsoft, I'm not sure what to expect, but given the rising competition and demand for AI, I think they're likely to have strong CapEx numbers too. But those are the two of the hyperscalers that I'm less certain about when it comes to CapEx guidance for this earnings season. I continue to be bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, and the China news provides additional upside to what was already a very strong long-term setup. Blackwell has ramped quickly, and Blackwell Ultra has launched with CoreWeave announcing the first GB300 deployment a couple of weeks ago. I've seen an article circulating on social media that is being misquoted as saying that GB300 shipments will start in Q3, but they've already started. The article I'm referring to simply said that shipments will start to ship in large quantities starting in Q3. Make no mistake, Blackwell Ultra has launched, and the production ramp should really start to pick up in Q3. After Blackwell has ramped, we should see margins move back up to the mid 70% range late this fiscal year. NVIDIA maintains a strong competitive moat across the entire stack, both hardware and software, with CUDA providing a massive advantage in NVIDIA maintaining its moat. NVIDIA's software offerings in CUDA provide developers with the assurance that whatever they build will run efficiently. Companies are racing to develop the best models and the best apps as fast as possible, and they do not want to waste months on trying to learn how to develop on a different platform. If they build on CUDA, they want to stay on CUDA, and that is massively beneficial to NVIDIA maintaining their moat. NVIDIA is delivering performance upgrades that directly increase their customers' AI factory revenues, and these performance upgrades are very substantial from one generation of product to the next. We have a clear data center product roadmap stretching all the way to 2028, and Jensen believes the world's computing capex will reach $1 trillion annually by 2030. If he is correct, then NVIDIA should be worth considerably more in the years ahead than it is today. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.